Okay, Success Nation, this is your host Michael Nguyen from asiansuccessmagazine.com, where successful entrepreneurs show you how they build a company and achieve success. I'm so excited to have one guest today. His name is Vincent Kitirattragarn, and he is the creator of the award-winning Dang coconut chips. And this is the first nationally available brand of toasted coconut chips in the US. And Dang coconut chips are available at more than 2,000 stores nationwide, including Safeway, Whole Foods, Sprouts, Fresh Market, and Amazon.com. And Vincent was recently honored on Forbes 30 Under 30 in 2014. So, Vincent, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Vincent, are you prepared to inspire?
Absolutely.
I've given our listener just an overview about you, so take a minute and tell us about you personally because we want to get to know you and then give us an overview about your business.
Sure, Michael. So my name is Vincent. I was born in New York City. I'm 29 years old. Currently live in Oakland, California, and our office is in Berkeley. And I am the founder and creator of Dang Coconut Chips. And Dang is my mother's name. One day she gave me a recipe for Thai lettuce wraps, and it had toasted coconut as an ingredient. And I thought the toasted coconut tasted so good that it could be a snack on its own rather than an ingredient. And so we went to work and then launched a line of coconut chips. And it turns out that other people agree with me. They really like the taste of it on its own and think that they can eat it as a snack. And so Dang is kind of unique in that we created this new category for coconut chips that didn't
That's
exist
awesome.
before.
Vincent, do you have a success quote ready to share with the audience? It's sort of the way to get the motivational ball rolling.
Sure. So at one point in my career, I was at a job that I didn't like, that I was ready to leave. And I wrote up an email to my boss saying, okay, I'm quitting. Before I sent it, I talked to my dad and I said, hey, so I'm thinking of leaving this job. And then he asked me, what am I going to do now? And I didn't have a good answer. And he gave me a piece of advice that you know, I found very meaningful at the time and I continue to use to this day, which is that it's very important to maintain your momentum, because if you lose your momentum, you might get stuck. It's very hard to start moving once you stop. So I'd say the business lesson there is to always keep moving, even if you don't know the right direction. It's important to keep moving, and eventually you'll figure out the way.
And how do you apply that quote to your business and to your everyday life?
So in business, you have to make a lot of decisions, and it's not clear always what the perfect decision is. Even if you have all the data in the world, you might not have a very clear picture of what the future looks like. So a lot of it is a gut feeling, and the more you work on yourself, the better that becomes, that sense of intuition. So I would say I use that by turning to my gut and making decisions quicker rather than hesitating, because at the end of the day, the gut is just as wise as your brain.
Let's help the audience scroll back several years. Back then, before you created this famous coconut chips. So, can I ask you about what was the aha moment that leading to the event of this coconut chip?
So the aha moment came when my mom gave me the recipe, and I made this recipe that had toasted coconut as an ingredient. And anyone can make it. You just go to the store. I went to the Asian store, the Asian market, and bought sweetened coconut and then put it in a pan, just stirring it under low heat. And then eventually all the moisture evaporated and all the smell came out of it. And that strong aroma was very powerful. So once I tasted it, I knew that this was something that, a taste profile that was unique here. And it turns out that I got very lucky. Coconut happens to be on trend right now in the food world with the proliferation of coconut waters and coconut oil. So we got very lucky in timing-wise that this is the perfect time to launch an item like coconut chips.
And what was the number one clear lesson that you learned from this experience?
I'd say the clearest lesson would be, I mean, for success in business, it's finding a product that is a 10 out of 10. So, with our new product development, with our package design, you aren't going to succeed, and you're going to have you're not going to say you're not going to succeed, but you're going to have a lot easier time if you make sure everything is right from the beginning. So I would recommend, if you're creating a product, paying attention to every detail from the beginning.
Vincent, can you share with the audience about the status of Dan Coconut Chip right now as far as the growth for this year and at this year of Q1 of 2014?
At this point, we're focused on expanding our presence in the Midwest and the East, particularly. We spent our first year building out distribution on the West Coast, and did a pretty good job. We are the market leader for coconut chips, and since we came out, we've noticed other competitors have released similar products. So at this point, it's moving fast and trying to stay ahead of the competition.
Wonderful. And so right now you're trying to build all the distribution channels, and as far as the percentage of revenue growth, and can you share some of that?
Yeah, well, we're projecting at least 150% revenue growth this year over last year. Last year it was our first full year, so we did over $1 million in sales, and now we're hoping to hit 5 this year and then 10 next.
When you first thought about that idea, and I'm really curious on, so hopefully by the time that I can help you out and understand how you can build a network of 2,000 stores nationwide right now. So let's start with the first thing. Like, when you thought about that idea, how did you get started and get momentum rolling, like you mentioned earlier with your quote?
Yeah, well, the first thing I did was, I didn't know anything about the food industry, so I tried to go to events and surround myself with people that did know something. So I literally had a bag full of samples and walked into a trade show. And there are these trade shows for every industry. And so I went to the Fancy Food Show, which is one of the trade shows for the food industry, and literally just walked up to people and said, "Hey, I have this product. What do you think of it? And if you like it, then how can we get it into your stores?" And the very, very first person I happened to talk to happened to be a Whole Foods buyer. He was a buyer for Whole Foods in the Northeast region, which is one of their biggest regions. So he gave me good feedback, and he said he wanted to see packaging, and I knew from there that if I could bring it together and get the packaging and make sure the logistics were set up, that we had a chance
some
to
validation
succeed.
right there at the trade show from some of the big names like Whole Foods and some other guys.
Yeah, and I would say it's very important at the beginning when you're switching careers to find advisors and mentors. So we've been lucky enough to have very good advisors that can help steer the ship when it comes to navigating
At that time, when
waters.
you went to the trade show, do you have have you set up some sort of manufacturing process to get the chips out of the door already, or you just made things by yourself by hand?
No, at that point we actually we asked for samples from manufacturers, and so we had samples that from contract manufacturers, and we put those into our own little chip containers. We didn't have packaging set up. We barely had a logo together and business cards, but we basically did what needed to get done to get to that show, and it turned out to be very fruitful for us.
I think the important process is that when you said you get the sample from manufacturers, where was that? Is that from Thailand or America?
Thailand.
From Thailand. And then how did you go over there to personally sample that coconut chip that
no, I have family in
help
Thailand.
You sort of sample and sourcing, do those sorts.
They help out with sourcing and finding.
I guess the first step is to have a reputable manufacturers, right? So that they can take good care of business for you.
Yeah, that is the first step, and so that's what their job is over there. My cousin helps me find the right co-packers or manufacturers, and then work with them. She quality checks every shipment that we get to make sure that it's high quality, because when you're trying to build a brand and you get negative feedback from your customers.
Now, at that time, did they ask for a lot of upfront money to get the sample going, or you know, or how does it work? Can you share with the audience your experience of dealing with international manufacturers?
Yes, you basically go to them with a product idea, and maybe they make something similar. So, say you want to do dried mango, you find someone who's making something similar and say, okay, I want it like what you have, maybe a little bit different, less sugar, less preservatives, and then you start working on package design. And package design is very important because when you're sitting on the shelf next to 50,000 other products, you need to figure out a way to stand out. So in many ways, the package is the product that you're selling, not just the food inside.
Okay, from the time that when you got the validation from the whole food guy, you said, okay, we really interested in your chips. And what was the next step that you take?
At that point, we had to figure out uh, the logo, the package design, the logistics process, so how to ship over a container of coconut chips, and then buyers. How do we find buyers?
So which one is more difficult?
Well, neither. They're both equally difficult. The buyers, it's difficult to get on their radar sometimes, and so you need to network a lot in order to figure out who to talk to. Usually, there's one person that you need to talk to for a given account, say Whole Foods in California. But and sometimes that person can prove elusive because they have everybody trying to pitch them on their product. So that requires networking. The manufacturing side just requires attention to detail.
I read an article that you're saying, how did you come up with the idea of having two sizes? One for personal and the other one is for sharings.
I knew that we wanted to go into smaller markets and larger markets, and the smaller markets, it's easier for them to pick up a smaller bag. It's more of a trial size that's easier for people to buy, and it costs less. And once they like it, if they like it, then they can buy the big size. So that was just a function of, targeting different parts of different types of markets.
And somewhere you said we have to pump a little air so to make the bag fluffy. That's a smart idea. How did you come up with that idea?
You basically look at what other people are doing. It's called a nitrogen flush. So they flush out existing air with nitrogen, and helps preserve it, but also helps protect the chips. So when you buy a bag of potato chips, it usually has some air in it because they want to avoid it being crushed. But when it's too full, then if you go to a higher altitude, it gets even bigger.
So when you ship out the first batch from Thailand to here, how many bags did you order?
Probably between 20,000 bags.
At that time, what was the cost per bag?
At that time, maybe 70 cents a bag.
Quite a big amount of money. At that time, did you have to borrow from your mom, your dad, or you save up?
I use savings for that. Yeah, and then profits from that go back into buying more.
So the first batch, how did you sell the first batch?
So the contacts that you make at the trade shows, you follow up with them, and they say they want it at this time. And then when you get it here, you can deliver it to them if they are ready. So you basically need to make sure to communicate closely with them what you have, when it's available, how much you have.
Somewhere along the line, did they have to inspect your food to make sure it passed XYZ? How does it work?
There's no inspection by the buyers. The FDA can expect when you import goods, when you import anything, the FDA will inspect it. So you have to make sure it's compliant with FDA rules and regulations, including labeling laws. So that's an important part. You need to get barcodes, because if it doesn't have a barcode, you can't scan it. You have to figure out how to buy barcodes. You need to get set up as a business, and I get a reseller's permit, get access, all the fun stuff. Get your accounting set up, and once you do that, you have to figure out how to stay on the shelf once you sell it in. And so that's the challenge sometimes, is not how to get on the shelf, but how to stay on the shelf.
First batch, you showed up recommunicated with those guys at the trade show, and which one ordered first, like the Whole Food guy or some other the people that you knew?
Whole Foods was not the first. We had some accounts down in Texas, some smaller grocery stores, some smaller distributors. So working with distributors is a big part of this industry. And you're not going to get into 2,000 stores by sending 2,000 UPS boxes. You need to work with distributors because then you send them one pallet and they send it to 100 different stores. So yeah, once you start getting retailer interest, you can start getting distributor interest. And then
What retailers that you pitch your chip first?
Whole Foods, Safeway, Sprouts. The retailer leads the pack as far as getting interest. And then the distributor follows them typically, not always.
At that time, when was that? Is that back in 2012 or
Yeah, we launched in July 2012, got into 500 stores by the end of 2012. And then last year got Safeway. At the end of the year, we're in about 2,000 stores. And now we're on our way to 3,000.
So you said you launched back in summer of 2012, and I saw on that you have a page on Kickstarter to raise funds for this project. Can you share a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Kickstarter. I like to fund other people's projects, and when I had created this project, I thought it would be a good way to get the word out there, and kind of learn a little bit and make a little bit of money off of it. So we funded our first production run via Kickstarter and raised $9,700, which helps pay for all the shipping and all the products that you're getting sent over. And we had to fulfill, we sent out coconut chips as our rewards. So we have fun filling all these boxes and sending it out to our Kickstarter supporters. And some of those supporters are some of our biggest fans even today. So it's a good way to get your word out there, and everybody likes to be a part of something early. So those people tend to stick around and become your biggest brand ambassadors.
So did you start your Kickstarter project after the first batch that you ordered from Thailand, and then did you have the money on time to pay for the first batch?
Yeah, we got it together in time. Yep.
Okay, I saw the photo, I saw the video on Kickstarter page, and how do you transfer the excitement of the chips so that you can get the fun?
It's all about the video, so you have to try to inspire them in the video to get behind your product.
It's amazing. You can raise almost $10,000. How did you raise it up to 10 times that, like 100,000 backup chips?
Yeah, it's just a matter of scaling. So you can hire salespeople. We have a few salespeople around the country who try to have good relationships, and they get you into more accounts, more doors. And so finding those right people to work with as partners.
Can you share with the audience some of the experience or some of the techniques that you can find the right people to help you out?
Going to trade shows, sometimes those people will come and find you, and just networking, talking to people in the industry, finding out who's important, like who knows a lot of people, talk to your peers, talk to other brands, get their recommendations. It comes from a lot of networking and just being curious.
Interesting. So, in that process, can you share with the audience about a failure in your journey?
Sure. I mean, we've been rejected by lots of buyers. We like it when they accept us, but when they reject us, we have to look at ourselves more critically. Say, why didn't we not succeed this time? Was it a packaging thing, or do we have some competition out there? Are we too expensive for them, or are we not the right? Are we talking even to the right person? And so, you do learn a lot more from your failures than your successes. But I would say that, we've been very lucky that we've hit this at a good time.
Now, when you mentioned earlier, when you present your chips to either retailers or distributors and you get rejected, and then you said it maybe because of the design or the price, or How do you narrow down to exactly what was the main reason that people rejected you?
You ask them. You can ask them. You can say, hey, why did you reject me? Sometimes they tell you, sometimes they don't. And you go into the store and see what they ended up taking. Some people won't take any coconut chips for whatever reason. Some people, are loyal to certain brands.
I'm sure that the price negotiation is the most interesting. How do you do the price negotiation with those retailers?
That's a good question. A lot of times it works backwards. So you start at where you want to hit on the shelf. Say you want to be at $3 on the shelf. You need to learn what the retailer margin is, what the distributor margin is, and the margin that you need in order to stay in business. And there's no perfect formula for that, but the more you know about what other people charge, the better, the more accurately you can forecast.
Let's focus on how you did that on the first retailers. Who were your first retailers again?
Most retailers, like Whole Foods, typically run a margin of 40%. And it's margin, not markup. There's an important difference there. Margin is if you take a 50% margin, then you're buying something for $1 and selling it at $2. It's 50% markup, you're buying it for $1, selling it at $1.50. So that's the lesson for. So they typically take 40% margin. Distributors typically take 25% margin, and then you need a healthy margin in order to succeed as a company and grow. So you have to you can buy books that have all this in it, have all the math in it, but and from that point you need to negotiate promotions and deals. So when you go in the store and you say, hey, this is for sale, you can get 2 for 1. Is that all coming out of your pocket, or can you share that expense with the supplier, with the partner?
How long did it take you and the other party to come up with a price that you both were happy about?
Usually you offer something and they say yes or no. And if they say no, then you say, okay, can you do this? And usually, you eventually come down to something. It's normal negotiation. You offer something and then they offer you back until you get to a certain point. Sometimes there's no positive bargaining zone and you can't get to that certain point.
So I'd like to understand more. So besides that negotiation, is that the price is a main focus, or there are several other factors that is as important as the price?
Price is usually the most important thing, but there are other things like timing. Timing is important. Availability is important. Other support, like it's not just price, but can you buy their ads? Can you support it with in-store sampling demos? Are you going to set exclusivity is big. So some retailers really like it if you just offer them something and don't offer it to anybody else. So there's a lot of things that you can negotiate on.
So when you went to negotiate with them, did you go by yourself, or you have your dad help you, or some sort of advisor help you out with that?
Advisors will help out with pricing, but typically with negotiations, that's just you and them. And it just comes down to knowing what you need to do in order to make a deal happen if you really want it that bad.
What is the most expensive mistake that you ever made?
Well, right now we have about almost 1 million empty bags, which cost probably $50,000 or $100,000, and we thought that our forecast was very high, and so we bought a lot of bags, and it turns out we didn't need to buy that many bags. So it's not a mistake, but it's something that we wish we didn't do, is buy all these empty bags and just have them piled up right now. So I guess, making sure that you don't get too excited when something nice happens. So when a big chain like Safeway shows interest, you can't get super, super excited and then basically believe that it's like you're going to sell 5 million overnight.
That's really interesting, because
like
it's not the first year you're doing this, and then you still sort of not getting the forecast right.
Yeah, forecasting is very hard when you're growing.
At the end of 2012, how many stores that you sign up with?
500,
And at the end of 2013,
2000.
so the 400% growth over there. What was the major milestone that just accelerated your growth to 400%?
Rolling out nationwide with Safeway, that's 1,000 of those stores, and getting into 8 regions of Whole Foods, which is another 250 stores.
And was the negotiation session any more difficult than any previous one, or is it just normal?
No, I mean, it's the same whether you're talking about one
So that's
store or 1,000 stores. The negotiation process is exactly the same.
So you just once you master the negotiation from some earlier store, you can reuse it.
It's good to practice with.
At the beginning of the interview, you mentioned that there were some of the copycat, or I heard that Trader Joe's, they launched their own private coconut chips, and how was that affecting you?
So Trader Joe's actually hasn't hurt us because Trader Joe's does their own private label a lot of the time. If anything, it actually helped us. It helped increase awareness of coconut chips overall. When we first launched, no one knew what a coconut chip was, but now they see ours and they see Trader Joe's and they're like, oh, I've seen that in Trader Joe's. Okay, maybe I'll try yours now that I know what it is. And a lot of people try it and they're like, oh, okay, this actually tastes pretty good. And a lot of people prefer ours to Trader Joe's. Now, Trader Joe's happens to be, very cheap. It's $2 rather than $3. So, we're not competing with them directly, though, for the same customer, which is nice.
Besides Trader Joe's, I'm sure that there are some other people that are doing coconut chips. And does it hurt your sales or your projection for this year?
So far, it hasn't. If anything, it's helping us move faster. So we're launching 3 new items this year, and they're kind of struggling. They have to catch up as far as getting our distribution out there. So we still think that there's a lot of advantages to being the first mover, and we're trying to move quickly to stay ahead.
Let's say, if you could go out and go to Thailand to ask them manufacturers a coconut chips. I mean, if a guy like Trader Joe, they have deeper pocket, they can go out and do the same like you. Are you afraid?
No. So it's important to keep up the relationships. But if anything is to be learned, then it's relationships that matter. So if you keep up good relationships with your supplier, keep up good relationships with your buyers, then they're going to be loyal to you and they won't buy or sell from other people. You see?
The other thing I am amazed about you is that you have 2 engineering degrees, and I learned that you really love entrepreneurship. There's a quote: I wouldn't be happy if I hadn't become an entrepreneur. Can you share with the audience about your passion in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I'm really bad at engineering. So that's why I wouldn't be happy as an engineer, because I'm not very good at it. I would say that this lifestyle of being an entrepreneur is a lot more, some people it just fits, right? It's a lot less structured, a lot more active learning and trying to problem solve. And so I prefer that to working for somebody else and having exact defined responsibilities in your job.
It's your first venture. What were holding you back from becoming an entrepreneur back then?
Having the right idea. Yeah, so when I was working as a research scientist, wasn't really an engineer. I started doing stuff with food on the side, like cooking on the side, just because I knew I was interested in it. For a while, I worked as a volunteer in a restaurant and didn't even get paid in DC, just to learn about Thai food and how the restaurant industry works. Quickly realized I didn't want to open a restaurant, and then stumbled into doing this. And this is actually a good fit because it mixes my love of food and then.
So during your tenure as entrepreneurs, what was the best advice that you ever received?
Yeah, it sounds simple, but work with people that you like, work with people that you be friends with, that you want to have a beer with. It'll make everything more enjoyable and you'll be a lot happier.
Can you share one of your experience that you picked the wrong people from from the beginnings and then you realize, oops, how did that affect you?
Yeah, well, at the beginning, you just want help, right? Because you need a lot of help, and so you're not as picky with picking, partners. And so, it's, I guess, the more you learn, the more experience you get, the more you understand people's limitations, what they can promise you, what they can't. So, for us, it's a little bit like, uh, at this point, we know enough about the industry that we can always ask for references. And yeah, so I say it's important to ask for people's references if they're coming to,
So as a
want to
leader
work with
of
you.
an organization, what can you share one of the personal habits that you believe contribute to your success?
Personal habits. I would say, yeah, I guess just spending time before starting a company. I think it's worth it to spend time figuring out yourself. So doing personal growth, um, because as you move along, you're gonna constantly come back to like, okay, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What decision should I make? And it all comes down to like your character. And so I would say work on that before anything. And there's nothing better than to work on yourself than traveling, doing things that you find interesting, and just figuring out who you are first. So I would say that's a good first step for
Oh, so
starting a
you try to
company.
figure out what you really like first from the beginnings.
Yeah, I mean, look, I figured out that I like food. It took me a long time to figure that out because I was liked eating, right? Everyone likes eating. But then I realized, oh, okay, maybe I actually have a knack for this. It took a long time.
Do you have like an internet resource that you in love with and you would like to share with the audience?
Gmail. um, I don't have one particular internet resource I like, ton. I use a lot of Dropbox. I use a lot of Facebook. Uh, Everyone uses Facebook. Yeah, I don't think I have one
So
particular
Gmail,
one that I use
Dropbox,
more
and
than the
Facebook
others.
are those two that you use a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Instagram, Twitter, all the social media.
Perfect. Hey Vincent, what is your proudest entrepreneurial moment
uh, I think
right now?
right now.
Can you tell me why?
No, I think the Forbes 30 under 30 thing was great. And then being mentioned in the New York Times, that was a goal that I had set for myself a long time ago. And I think that I was very proud about that because, yeah, it didn't come about, you know,
How you feel when you were recognized on Forbes 30 under 30?
yeah, that felt great. That was great. It was nice to be, mentioned with great company like LeBron James, right? But I think that being mentioned in the New York Times, because I grew up with that newspaper, I grew up in New York. I think that that was a little more personal to me.
If you can recommend one book to my audience, what would it be?
Seth Goldman, who's the CEO of Honest Tea, he just released a book called Mission in a Bottle. Mission in a Bottle. It's his story about how he started Honest Tea and grew it to be $100 million, while still, keeping his soul. And it's a fun book. It's all animated, so it's very easy to read. It's very fun, but there's a lot of cool business lessons along the way. And he's a great guy.
Look, I really enjoy listening to your journey and the stories you share were really inspiring. So, give Success Nation one parting piece of guidance and share the best way that we can find you, and then we say goodbye.
Sure, you can find our store locator or buy our chips online at dangfoods.com. We're also available on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter with the handle at dangfoods. We have two flavors: the original recipe, which is my mom's recipe of coconut chips, and a caramel sea salt. And we'll be coming out with a lightly salted, unsweetened version, as well as chocolate coated and Greek yogurt coated this summer. And so you can look for those at stores near you, including Safeway
And what
and Whole
was the
Foods.
parting piece of advice, of guidance that you might want to share with you?
It's the last piece of advice I would have is to trust yourself. At the end of the day, everybody has their own opinion on how they would run your business and run your life, but it comes down to what you truly want. So making that very clear from the beginning will help you a lot as you progress.